Okay, good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and the Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, May 14th, 2019 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Heitman.
Here.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
Here.
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Dempsey.
Present.
Trustee Kermey.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heitman.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The month of May is well known as a month for recognizing many of our officials and employees in the public service. We have three recognitions tonight. One is for National Police Week, Peace Officers Memorial Day. The second is for recognition of National Emergency Medical Services Week, and the third is recognition of National Public Works Week. So we're going to start with Police Week, and I'd like Jackson Chalmers, Matt Brothers, and Matt Brothers to come forward. Officers. I was told to say that Matthew Brothers is the nephew of our Lieutenant John Brothers. So, gentlemen, if you could come forward here a little bit, we will have the official presentation. And don't worry, I will not read this whole thing tonight, but it's very important for us to recognize the wonderful work that our police officers do, both here and across the country. You have a very difficult job, and it seems like not a week goes by when we do not lose an officer in this country in the line of duty, and that is a national tragedy. I was in Washington, D.C. last week for most of the week, and when I was leaving, there were honor guards of police officers from around the country who were greeting the families of fallen officers. They were greeting them when they got off the plane. And you see a huge airport like Washington National just go silent when that happens, and we saw it happen several times. So we certainly love and appreciate the work that you do. And in recognition of that, National Police Week is from May 12th to the 18th, and we want to recognize you again for all your terrific service in keeping our community safe. Here you go.
Good job. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you. Which one was Brothers?
Good job, man.
Thank you.
Good job.
And May 19th through the 25th is Emergency Medical Services Week. So I'd like firefighters Chris Holler, Nick Hansen, and Richie Inman to come forward. These three gentlemen represent some of the finest EMS technicians in Michigan, and we appreciate your professionalism and your commitment to duty for the people of Plymouth Township for helping keep us safe and secure. This is National Emergency Medical Services Week, May 19th to the 25th. I'd like to present it to you guys tonight. Please hang it up in the fire station, show it around, and as a constant reminder of the fact that we respect and appreciate all the terrific work that you do and your dedication to the job of keeping us safe and healthy in the community. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Nice job.
Thank you.
Nice job, buddy. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, no, he's fine. Okay, last but not least, May 19th through the 25th is National Public Works Week. Public Works employees are some of the unsung heroes of township, city, and county government. I used to work in a very complex DPW-type environment for many years at Wayne County, and I know the kind of long hours, hard work, and dedication to duty that we see from our DPW staff here at Township Hall every day. In the middle of the night when there's a water main break, in the middle of winter when there's a hazard that needs to be addressed, it's our DPW guys who are often first on the scene to help fix the problem and get our lives back on track. So I want at this time for Dan Heyman and Steve Milo to come forward. Patrick, if you can come forward too. You're their boss, so. So gentlemen, again, in honor of National Public Works Week, we've got this proclamation here for you. Again, we really appreciate all the hard work that you do, both at the DPW facility and here at Township Hall. And we can't say thank you enough, really, guys. Thanks. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Steve Milo, I believe you have a son in the military. Is that correct? How is he doing right now?
He's doing really good. He got there from Spain. He's a little time over there. He's in Virginia right now. He's getting ready to finish his last 2 years of block.
Great job. Well, we thank him for his service. And if you could lead us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next up is item C, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, May 14th, 2019.
Motion has been made by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Heitman. All those in favor,
I
signify by
reviewed the
saying-
bills, so
Well,
no questions.
okay, we're getting to the
Oh,
consent
all right.
agenda. Yep. So all those in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Next is approval of the consent agenda. Any comments or questions? Chuck?
So I approved the bills. Miraculously, I had no questions.
Oh,
I have two comments regarding the Fire Department monthly report. One thing to think about, we received 0 mutual aid this month, and we gave 11. So it's just something to think about. And our transports went up this month. We're 24%, which is the highest it's been, I think, in 2 years. $60,000 in outstanding bills. Almost 20% of those are over 180 days old. I'm a little concerned that Merchants and Medical, who we give these things to, when's the last time we reviewed who looks at these? And is that something that other companies do? Be honest, they don't seem to be doing too good of a job for me. But is that something we can look at, or?
Yeah, we should review that.
We last used a company called Acumed, I believe around 2010, and we changed to MHR billing about that time, maybe a little bit before then, and we've used them ever since.
I was a little concerned when I saw there were 1.6 stars out of 5, and more comments were 1s and there were 3s. So I think it's worth looking into. If we're going to have money outstanding, I'd much rather it come back into the township than getting written off. That's all I've got. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Any other comments on item D?
Oh.
Chuck?
Police report. May we have something that shows where these larceny crimes, which is our biggest crime, where they are? Remember the old days where they used to put pins in the map? Something like that that's electronic or geographic, to provide as a tool for us to be aware where these larcenies are. People probably stealing from cars and houses.
Nice picture.
Is that subject to FOIA or no?
You don't have to give the exact address, but
Chuck, we are working on a GIS system for all departments, and police is one of those departments that can benefit from a good GIS system, and that's the kind of mapping that we would like to see in that kind of system. Okay. Any other comments or questions on item D? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Heitman.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clerk Vorva. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up is item E, public comments and questions limited to 3 minutes. This is not your only opportunity during the evening to comment on items. We will have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. And we do encourage questions and comments on individual agenda items as long as they are relevant to that particular item. So at this time, is there anybody who would like to come forward on public comments and questions? Okay, then, we're going to move on to new business. This is item F1. This is the Plymouth Notch Litchfield Special Assessment District Hearing of Necessity. Public Services Director Patrick Fellrath.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. Tonight, this is the Special Assessment District for the Plymouth Notch subdivision for reconstructing the roads for that subdivision, Litchfield Drive and Litchfield Court. This is the public hearing of necessity. This is the first of 2 public hearings under the SAD process. Tonight, the board is asked to approve a resolution that would authorize the engineer, OHM, our road consultant engineers, George Sackhoff from OHM is here tonight, to proceed with final engineering and to solicit bids for the project and to prepare a special assessment roll that would be later brought to this board at the second public hearing later in the summer, the public hearing of assessment, provided that support for the project remains adequate moving forward. Right now, the support is included in the tentative roll that's included in your packet for both frontage and total number of units. The support is around 65%. That meets both criteria. The preliminary engineering was complete, and the preliminary engineering cost estimate was provided to all the residents in a mailing and also in a informational meeting that was held previous to this meeting tonight. If you have any questions, again, George from OHM is here. I am here, and it's open to questions.
I see Bob has got onto Google Earth and has given us a very unique perspective on the current, this was actually not the current condition, I'm sure it's worse now, of Litchfield. You can see the damage pretty graphically and just on Google Earth, and it gets worse the further down the street you get. There's another good example. My personal opinion is this is probably the worst non-dirt road in the township, and I think, Patrick, the residents are looking at how much per household to do these repairs?
Right now, including the county contribution per household, it's $18,700 per household.
Okay. And the Board of Trustees has authorized an expenditure out of the Wayne County roads allocation for this year, and that was, what, about 187 or something?
The
Or
Wayne
more.
County contribution is $388,000.
Oh, 388, okay, well. Well, and they're still paying, 18,000, so. Yeah,
They're paying 18 net.
yeah. With the county,
getting
Patrick, with the county money, they're still paying 18,700.
Without the county money, they'd be paying 31.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
That includes the court's included in the SAD too, right?
Yes, it is.
It is. Yes, unfortunately, the only repair is to reconstruct the entire road. Correct.
what about drainage, Patrick?
Drainage will be improved and
Great if we could go over there, so we can all hear you, the people can hear you at home, but I have another question. Is the failure mode because of that kind of concrete that was used in the 1990s? I forgot, it's a 3-letter acronym? Or is it because of drainage?
So yeah, the pavement is exhibiting what we call ASR. It's an alkali silica reaction, which was common in a lot of the concrete roads built in the 80s and 90s. So a lot of that blowout you see at the joints, that's indicative of the ASR issue. So definitely there's a material issue there, but could also be some subgrade failure. But really, the only feasible option is to reconstruct the entire cross-section. You wouldn't want to try to rehab this type of a situation.
ASR is was because of the cement or the aggregate?
It's a chemical reaction between the silica sand and alkali in the cement. So an issue most likely with the mix design during that time frame that was later resolved, but in that time frame caused a lot of issues later on with pavement that was placed during that time. So you don't tend to see that as much anymore. And there's also ways at the plant when they do the mix design that they can create a mix design that limits the potential for that reaction. So the industry is just much more knowledgeable on that topic today than they were 30 years ago.
It didn't happen before 30 years ago. But it had to
Correct. There was a time frame in there where whatever they did with the mix design and the proportions and the types of materials that they were using, it did cause that issue. I mean, that's what we've seen historically. Yeah. So yeah, the improvement is a full reconstruction, full cross section, placement of new aggregate base, under drain system, which will help immensely with the subgrade stability, and then new concrete pavement.
What date would the construction anticipate starting?
So based on our design schedule and permitting through Wayne County, we're anticipating a start sometime soon after Labor Day. So it will be a late construction project, but we're hopeful that we can get it installed this year. I think it's important to get it in this year.
You can't be hopeful with the winter. You have to get the pavement down in time for winter.
Yeah, as far as the project start, I mean, if we start after Labor Day, the project would be completed by, I would say, early to mid-November, it would be done. And with concrete placement, that typically goes through November.
I want to ensure you get a high-quality job.
Absolutely.
If you have heavy rains, not an issue.
Well, we certainly can't predict the weather, but starting soon after Labor Day will give us some wiggle room with the weather. So that's really the most expedited schedule we can handle right now based on the public process for the SAD and getting the design done, getting the permit through Wayne County. That's our anticipated schedule at this time.
Okay, any other questions by the board? Do we have anyone here from Litchfield who has any comments or questions? Please feel free to come forward if you have any. I mean, if you don't, then that's okay too. But if anybody has any comments or questions, either for the board or for any of the consultants, just come forward to the microphone.
May I?
Sorry.
Is there a homeowners association in this subdivision?
Yeah, there is.
May I interject?
Yes.
Just the statute requires a public hearing. The board might want to open a public hearing before hearing from the residents.
It's been properly noticed.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so just have a seat right there because we have to go through a little procedural formality right now. At this time, I'd like to open a public hearing for the purposes of taking public testimony on the Special Assessment District for Plymouth Notch subdivision, also known as Litchfield Drive, public hearing of necessity. Is there a motion?
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the opening of the public hearing for the Plymouth Notch subdivision, Litchfield Drive.
Motion has been made
Hearing
by
for
Clerk
necessity.
Orva. Is there a
Second.
second by Trustee Kermy? Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Kermy,
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey,
Yes.
Clerk Forva, yes. Treasurer Clinton,
Yes.
Supervisor Heising.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman, excuse me. Trustee Dorshevitz.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, so now we are open for a public hearing, at 7:20. So this is now the public hearing portion of this particular item, and we have someone here from the public. So, sir, please state your name for the record and share your thoughts.
I am Drew
I
Algate.
think you're going to have to use the other mic. The
The other one, see it right there?
Right.
You can take it right
Take it
out
out.
of its holster there.
That's okay. It'll work. I got it. Just have to aim it down. Drew Algate, Litchfield Drive. I am not representing the homeowners association, so not an
That's
officer.
okay.
Brought the question up before, but one of the things is the reconstruction is absolutely necessary. We're pretty far down the road, so to speak, but I'm wondering about, is concrete the best solution for a limited access road
Good question.
versus asphalt, which is kind of what we're using almost all the other roads?
George or Pat, would you like to respond to that? And then, Georgia, you're going to have to come up here again.
So early in the process, we did look at multiple options for the roadway. Obviously, our intent is to propose what we think is the most feasible long-term solution to the project. We did initially look at a concrete and asphalt reconstruction. We've seen the pricing for the asphalt up quite a bit this year. At least early this year, the pricing for asphalt has been quite a bit higher. So when we compared the two estimates, we were at about a $1,500 to $2,000 difference per homeowner between the two options. I know Patrick and I, discussed the two options, and we had some discussion with the leaders from the HOA. And as far as I understood, the preference of the majority of the homeowners was to reconstruct in concrete. So we did proceed in that fashion and presented that as our final option. And it's not to say that asphalt is not an option. It is. I mean, both are options, but with the price point being pretty close between the two, we sensed that the preference of the majority of the homeowners was for concrete reconstruction.
So they're paying a $1,500 premium for concrete?
Well, based on our estimate, that was the difference between our two estimates.
All right, durability. Is asphalt more forgiving to ground movement and bad drainage?
Asphalt is a flexible pavement. Concrete is a rigid pavement. Concrete typically has a longer pavement life. It's based on industry standards. In this case, with the traffic loading, either pavement would be sufficient. So they're both high-performing pavements, and you see both, in both local and major roadways, you see both options.
So the judgment on durability is it'll be slightly more durable or resistant to ground movement if it's asphalt, right?
Well, I mean, with concrete, as I said, it's a rigid pavement, so what they do is they saw control joints in the pavement so that when the concrete does move, it cracks at the saw cut. So, concrete will crack because it's rigid, but that's the reason they put in control joints and saw cuts.
But asphalt can be ground down easier and resurfaced.
Sure, there's.
Okay, I'll cut to the chase. If it was my money and my decision, asphalt.
Sure, and I know there was differing opinions within the development, but again, I think at some point we decided we needed to move forward with one option, and the sense was that concrete was, by the majority, the preferred option.
Yeah, but there's by people who don't have any technical knowledge. They just thought it looked better or it sounded stronger, but asphalt at this location, if I was making a decision, is the right way to go. In fact, if you go to other parts of the country and the world, they use asphalt on roads a lot more than we do, but one of the reasons is that they can grind it down every 10 to 20 years, or even less, quickly and resurface it.
Yeah, there's certainly different rehabilitation methods you can utilize. I mean, with concrete, you are basically into a patch type repair in the future, although crack sealing obviously will, it'll extend the longevity of the pavement. We had two public informational meetings, and we did the best we could to explain both options and the differences between the pavement. But in the end, I think both Patrick and I thought, moving ahead with one selected option was the best.
Okay, any other questions by the board or the public? Anyone else from Litchfield who would like to weigh in on this? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion.
You close the
Oh,
meeting.
I need a motion to close the public hearing then. Mr. Heitman. Motion's made by trustee Heitman. Is there a second?
Vorba, second.
Second by clerk Vorba. And Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Heitman. Supervisor Heisey.
Yes?
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing is now closed at 7:25. Now I'm looking for a motion on the resolution.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-05-14-52, authorizing the engineer to complete final engineering drawings, to take bids, and to have the supervisor prepare the final special assessment roll for the board's approval upon completion of the 30-day waiting period, provided no objections have been filed.
Thank you. Motion's made by trustee Heitman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by clerk Vorba. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee
Yes.
Treasurer Clinton. Yes. Motion
Okay,
carries.
motion passes. Very good. Thank you. Next is item F2. This is purchase of items for the police department with federal drug forfeiture funds. Police Chief Tidrington and Lieutenant Kudra, but I think Lieutenant Kudra is going to be handling this? Or
I'll start it off.
you can start it off. Lieutenant Kudra, do you want to come up to the podium then? Or both?
Good evening. What we have are several items that we'd like to purchase out of the drug forfeiture. It's been our policy to bring all of the items that we want to purchase from the drug forfeiture account to the board. At this point, we completed for the items that we want to purchase. Lieutenant Kudra prepared the new capital item request that was in your board packet, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, let's, Lieutenant Kudra, why don't you explain a few of these items, and we'll entertain any questions that we may have for you.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and list off what we're looking to purchase real quick. We're looking to purchase 2 AEDs for the officers to carry in their patrol cars while they're out on patrol, 7 preliminary breath test machines, along with a calibration station to do our monthly calibration checks on those PVT machines, a ballistic shield, which we carry in our tactical unit, and then a number of firearms accessories, magazines, and some ammo.
One last item, you'll see a Plant Moran.
Chief, if you can get closer to the mic.
Sorry. And also a Plant Moran bill for the single audit that was done in previous years, that the bill just recently became due, and it's an appropriate expenditure based on the drug forfeiture guidelines.
Okay, very good. Any questions or comments from the board?
There was no mention in here of how, I know one of the items is being purchased from the store on Ford Road for firearms, but tell me, did you buy this through Oakland County? Did you take 3 bids? How did you do your purchasing process?
For which of these?
For all of them.
Okay, so for the AEDs, that's a state contract, so there's really no bidding required there. The same thing with the PVTs and the calibration station. That's a state bid as well. The ballistic shield, I did not take bids on that. I utilized the vendor that we used for the previous one that we purchased, and then the same thing with the rifle accessories and the ammo. I used the vendor that we purchased the rifles from, and that was who the head of my firearms unit recommended we use.
What material is the shield made of? Pardon?
Yeah.
Well, is it Kevlar? So it's not a metal?
It's a plexiglass. It looks like plexiglass, but it will stop ballistic rounds, obviously.
So allegedly then
You tested
it must heat age or age and lose its properties.
That's
So
what
it's
they
some kind of a polymer.
Yeah.
All right.
Could you explain why the particular number of items? Why 2 versus 3 shields and so forth?
I'm looking to purchase one ballistic shield, and that is to replace the one that we have. The manufacturer guarantees that that's going to provide level 3A ballistic protection, which that's all explained to you in your information that was in the packet. That's like our vests that we wear. They guarantee that for 5 years. Ours is 7 years old. So I want to replace the one that we have. The AEDs, we currently have one. Generally, when I have guys out on patrol in the township, we assign them to 2 zones, one in the east zone, one in the west zone. I would like to have one in each half of the township. The one that I currently have is 13 years old. I have been advised by our fire chief that those should be replaced every 7 years. So that's why I'm looking for 2 of those.
How do you manage how do you get them into the car at the beginning of the shift? I mean, or how do you know they're in the car? You have multiple vehicles.
Yeah, we have an equipment room. The guys, the equipment that they check out, we actually have them log that. That is taken out of our equipment room and put in their cars at the beginning of the shift. And then they have to actually log what equipment they're carrying on their daily logs.
Okay, so you have a reasonably high confidence that the vehicles are equipped on that shift.
I have a very high confidence. I have a lot of guys who love saving lives. So they're chomping at the bit for more AEDs. They fight over the one that we have.
Because the other way would be to put one in every car. And that would be more expensive.
Well, yes. I only have, at full staffing, if I had one in every car, that'd be 10. I don't have that many people on the road, so.
Okay.
And then, so the items for the firearms unit, those are additional accessories to go along with the rifles that we purchased recently. And the number of those items corresponds with how many rifles we have. So.
Just another follow-up question. This breath alcohol tester, that doesn't do anything for other substances like marijuana or?
Strictly blood alcohol level.
Okay, so how do you deal with those on the road?
As far
Someone who appears to be under the influence of something else, say marijuana or cocaine or whatever.
Well, we would go through our standardized field sobriety testing, and the officers look for signs of impairment. If they have probable cause to believe that the person is impaired by a substance, they would go ahead and make that arrest, and then we would go ahead and take them to the hospital and have their blood drawn.
So there's no machine, no test equipment today that would do that like with alcohol?
That is correct.
And that's part of the problem with marijuana, the legalization of marijuana. There's no quantitative test to determine whether or not a person is impaired or under the influence.
I don't even think there's an agreed upon standard, is there?
I'm sorry?
It's not even an agreed upon standard.
No, because if you're smoking marijuana, it may affect you less than Trustee Heitman. I mean, as an example.
Always has.
As an example.
That was too easy.
It didn't say.
Pick on him.
I don't think Trustee Heitman inhaled.
Okay. All righty. Any other serious questions?
Well, going forward on budget planning, do you expect the federal side of the forfeiture funds to be diminished? And if so, we need to ration how we spend.
Well, we do ration how
I
we
mean,
spend the
even
money.
more so if it's going to end permanently.
Well, I don't expect it to end. The state forfeiture is not really going to have any effect on the federal forfeiture, I don't believe. It might even increase. It might even increase the forfeiture we get from the federal task force officers that we have assigned there. But I don't believe it's going to diminish our efforts or the drug proceeds that we seize, which are clearly taken from criminal organizations and not from, innocent people that are, going out to buy a car at a car, at the car lot. Those aren't the type of seizures that we make.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Any questions from the public on this item? All righty, then I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-05-14-53, authorizing the purchase of the above listed items and expenditures for the police department, and to do a full year 2019 first quarter budget amendment for the federal drug forfeiture budget to reflect these expenditures.
Motion's made by Trustee Heitman, seconded by Trustee Kermy. And I would add that the items listed above are also reflected in the resolution itself, right? So we do have those items fully listed in the resolution. All right, Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisler.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is item F3. This is the first quarter budget amendments. Cindy Kushner is Finance Director. If you would like, Cindy, you can sit in the engineer's seat. I think it says Township Engineer in front of you, so consider that I don't know if that's a promotion or not. It might be. Okay, Cindy, you have the floor.
Okay. All right. Good evening, trustees. I'd like to present to you, and it was included in your packet, the first quarter budget amendments. Starting with the general fund and the schedule that's up in front of you, we're looking at the general fund, and we're looking at increased expenses of about $309,000. The bulk of those expenditures, you're somewhat familiar with because they are the first year effects of the labor contracts that the board has already approved. So the total of those across the many different departments in the general fund is approximately $129,000, and you'll see that spread across the sheet in the different departments.
So remind me, when we established the budget, we put in something for these contracts, 2%, right?
The only increases we put in there were people that were going to get step-up increases. So if they were going from one level of police officer to another or what, or...
So only step up, not
Yes.
a general increase.
Not a general increase.
These are the general increases.
Correct.
Ms. Kushner, the two items about building improvement fund, could you explain those?
Yep, I was going to get to those. So, building improvement. Okay, so just to continue on, I'll get to all those things. I'd kind of like to go in order. We had two major repairs this quarter. One was to our UPS system. That's the system that keeps the power uninterrupted before the generator kicks on. We had a major repair there of $10,000. And we also had some issues in the building that required duct cleaning throughout the whole building. That was $11,500. So those were two big repair and maintenance items that came early on in the first quarter.
How effective was the duct cleaning at solving the problem?
We have not received any complaints from employees
So the $11,500 was worth it?
so far.
Seems like it.
Is this something we have to do every year?
No, but it was, I do not believe it had been done since the creation of the building in 2006.
Correct.
And we had been receiving complaints from employees, various medical issues that they were reporting. We had similar issues, I believe, in the police department not too long ago with the ducts and the PD. So this was just for the rest of Township Hall, exclusive of the police department.
Yeah, because we had done theirs in 2018. Okay, so then the next item, the two big items, $25,000 apiece, is one of the goals is to establish a building improvement fund for the police and the fire, and eventually for the general fund buildings also. But what we're trying to do is start putting money away for major repairs that we know are coming down the pike for many of these buildings. So these two $25,000 items are coming out of the general fund, and we're going to place them in our capital improvement fund, and we're going to keep saving and earning interest and saving them for a time where we have a major expenditure. This is going to be a slow process that we try to increase funds for every year.
Earning interest? There isn't much interest on $50,000 available today.
Well,
It's better than a poke in the eye.
let's see, the next group of items pertains to the fire department. And because many of our new firefighters were not hired until well into 2019, we need an adjustment for additional overtime. Have some single audit costs for the 2014 and 15 audits. And then we have a cot and a lift for the new ambulance, and pressure ventilation and 4 fire hoses, nozzles.
So we missed that many items for fire that weren't in the budget?
The positive pressure ventilation fan is replacing a fan that was broken this year. The fan is about 25 years old. It blows, it uses like a gas motor to blow fresh, clean air into a fire. 25 years ago, we didn't have battery technology like we do today, so we're replacing that with a battery-operated fan. The nozzles that we're replacing failed their tests this year, and we cannot repair them. They're somewhere over 25 to 35 years old, so we need to replace those.
So every one of these was a surprise if they're 25 years old?
They normally would pass tests, and this year they failed, and we can't get parts for them. We typically repair them. We have numerous nozzles that are 25 years old, still in service, that we can get parts for.
Okay.
Okay.
Then continuing on, the census is coming up next year, and there is a lot of preparation and work that needs to be done before that even happens. So in the coming year, we're planning on starting some of that activity. Right now, we expect about $10,000. We're just estimating expenses related to setting up for taking the census.
Hold on. Is that reimbursed by the federal government?
No.
So why? I've never heard of us spending $10,000 for census data. Tell me about it.
Because Sarah Weissel will be handling the bulk of the census responsibilities in terms of record keeping, filing, creation of records if necessary, finding records, retrieving records. I did, in a previous job, I was the census guy back in 1999 when everybody thought the world would end in 2000. But there is a lot of work, administrative and clerical work that needs to be done as part of that process. So we anticipate that Sarah will be attending off-site meetings, training sessions that may create overtime, and there will be other, possibly other things that she's going to be doing that will eat into that particular budget. Again, it's a placeholder. I'd be thrilled if we don't have to spend anything, but my experience and prudence in these issues tells me that that she will be spending a great deal of time helping prepare the census data for the township.
Kurt, I'm totally miffed by that. I have no local governments spending money on census or have responsibility. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's
When did this come about? The federal government is putting something on us?
It's been going on for years. I did it. I was doing it 20 years ago.
That's their job? I don't think Plymouth Township has ever spent that kind of money.
I hope we don't either, but, you know, I think...
Give me an example of what Sarah will have to do. Whose records?
Well, for example, I think Jerry's already received quite a bit of mail from the Census Bureau looking for data on demographic data, wage and income data, voting information. Some of that 10,000 may be attributed to Jerry's office, too. We don't know yet.
But Jerry, you don't collect demographic data?
No.
Why would they be coming to you?
But they ask that of the local government, and so frequently...
So you reply that we don't do this.
Excuse my voice. frequently inquiries are made to the clerk department, even though it may necessitate using another department to do something, they always come through the clerk's department.
Yeah.
And because it wasn't done before, doesn't mean that there wasn't an expense. It just may not have been shown that way in previous boards.
And, yeah, I mean, a lot of that was just baked into the normal clerk's budget because clerk staff was either working on it or maybe it wasn't getting done, I don't know. But anyway, as far as Sarah's time goes, Sarah's time on census stuff would be charged to that account. I do anticipate that she's going to have to be attending meetings. Hopefully, a lot of that stuff can be done online now, but I do know that there are training sessions that have to be attended and procedural meetings that are put on by the federal census authorities in southeast Michigan. It's quite a bit of work for local government. And yes, it's an unfunded mandate, but it is a mandate because it is in the U.S. Constitution. Is that right, Jack?
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
It's one of the first things they put in.
They shall be counted.
Can we go back one item to the new ordinance officer uniform?
Sure.
We've never had uniforms for ordinance officer before.
No, we have
Yes, we
not.
do now.
We do now.
Yes. The uniform consists of like an olive drab pants and a tan shirt. There's both a winter and a summer attire. There is a belt. There's, I think our ordinance officer is currently using her own boots from her other job. And, but we wanted to have an ordinance officer uniform so that both residents understand that you have somebody in authority coming to the house, and we also wanted a uniform that was that did not look like a police officer uniform because obviously she is unarmed and does not have arrest powers.
I'm glad to see this, knowing that Canton has it, Northville has it, and Plymouth City has it.
And we used to years ago have it here too.
Have what?
An ordinance officer that had a uniform.
Oh.
Years ago.
Thank you.
Good idea.
All right, then the last item on the schedule is non-union salary increases. We're not in the original 2019 budget. That amounts to $32,000 approximately, giving us a total of $309,215.
Well, what's the derivation of the $32,205?
Pretty exact.
Actually, it was rounded.
Good
but-
accounting.
So is there really a question about that, or?
What makes up that
What
number?
makes it up?
Yes.
It's salary, FICA, and the increased pension, 15% pension on those amounts.
For what employees?
Would not call it pension. I would refer to as retirement.
Retirement, sorry. Yeah, the 15% defined contribution percent on the wage increase.
For non-union. So is that all non-union or some non-union or?
This line item is for non-union covered in the general fund. I also have on the next two pages the amounts covered for the water and solid waste funds.
But no, this is not every non-union.
So
Yes.
it's not a general increase. It's
Yes.
it's selective by individuals. So when you get a chance, give us the list.
That reflects a budgeted, it's a budgeted number. It has not been expended, and I wanted to get it in there now before because I don't think the next budget amendment cycle is going to happen until September. So I wanted to have it in there now, but it has not been expended. But to answer Jerry's question, it covers all of the non-union
It does.
personnel.
Well, except for.
Well, you want me to say it?
Except for the deputy clerks.
Except for the deputy clerks
And deputies for the clerk and the treasurer.
So it does not apply to the deputy clerk or the deputy treasurer.
which would require board action.
Correct. And it also obviously does not apply
Doesn't
to the,
apply to us, yeah.
elected officials either. So. Okay. Now, Cindy, okay, you're on now the water or
Well-
solid waste.
Well, I'd like to just continue for a minute on the general fund on page 2 of the attachment. I just wanted to show the effect of that on fund balance. We had a budgeted fund balance of $4.94 million, and this is going to bring the fund balance down to $4.6 million. And then again, like I like to always remind the board that the fund balance amount doesn't mean all that money is spendable. So I subtracted that from that, all the items that are restricted or non-spendable or committed. So really what you have available to spend after these budget adjustments is $2.6 million.
And what's the golf course loan all about again?
Okay, the golf course loan, because that is not a liquid asset, it's a long-term loan, we cannot, we have to subtract it out of fund balance because it's not available to cover current expenditures.
Out of the 4.6.
Right.
When was that loan made?
That loan was made, I believe.
Over time, really.
Over time. I think the first installment was 2013 or 14.
Well, that's when
And
it
then-
was made long-term.
Right. And then it's been added to by interest every year. And then last year we had to increase it by, I think, about $120,000 because we had negative working capital in the golf course.
Okay, so it's the reason it's growing from 500 to 700 is accrued interest.
Accrued interest.
Accrued
and-
unpaid interest.
Right.
Not exclusively, though. I
Right,
think,
but-
I mean, I think there were other loans, quote unquote, that were made to the golf course to pay off
Other things.
non-performance of Billy Casper in the intervening years, including in the last 2 years.
Well, 2017 had a big one, big loss.
Yeah, so.
It was about double the average.
So what we have to look at in this situation is we look at the end of the year, we look at the balance sheet for the golf course. And because it's an enterprise fund and needs to stand on its own, if there's negative working capital, which means there's more current liabilities than current assets, we have to do something. The state will not let us have an enterprise fund that has negative working capital. So what we had to do is take some, we had a due from government on the due from the general fund account on the balance sheet, and I'm really getting into the weeds, but it was classified as current. So in order to make us good with the state, we had to take $125,000 of that and make it long-term, which increased the loan to give us positive working capital so that we did not have to file a plan with the state to get out of financial trouble.
So the good news, though, is beginning with 2020, our goal as a board, one of our long-term goals is to start doing 2-year budgets. So beginning in 2020, we will have a 2020-2021 budget, and we will begin over the next 5 year. It'll be a 5-year plan to pay down that loan each year to the tune of about $150,000. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's about 150, 160.
Okay. That money will come out of general fund. It will come out of, hopefully, we hope, golf course revenues with our new operators. But it is really it's a fiscal priority for us to get that thing out of our budget and get it off the books and pay it down, and that's what we intend to do. The board will be seeing a motion, a resolution, sometime in June, where we will be reducing the interest rate that we are charging to ourselves for that particular loan. So remember, this is, as we pay that loan off, and this is where it gets into the mystery of accounting practices, but as we pay that loan off, we are taking money from one pocket and putting it into the other. But we're not losing money, but we do have to begin budgeting positively to pay that negative balance down. So we thought that with a clean start now, with a new golf course operator, and with a more positive financial outlook for the township, that we would have the ability to start doing that.
So for the non-financial types like me, this is a $700,000 liability owed to the general fund by the Golf Course Enterprise Fund, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So the reason you show it here is on the theory that if it was not paid back, if it was uncollectible, we would have to take that $700,000 out of this fund balance to write it off. Is that kind of what I understand?
That's one way of looking at it. That would be true if that happened. And it's also there to show that even though you have that fund balance number, that money isn't there to spend. So your interpretation is also true, but the second one is also because it's not a current asset, we can't present it as spendable. And in the general fund, what we have to do is isolate what the bottom line spendable fund balance is.
When this is presented in June, could you lay out how this originated and how it was added to and the interest and all of that?
Yep.
So we have a real clear record
Yep,
of...
I actually have a schedule, and I'll be happy to bring it forward.
The thought, Jack, and I think it's a good one, is we've got a new management team now running the golf course. They've got a 5-year contract. So we thought, let's take this $700,000 deficit and spread it out over the next 5 years. Either A, they'll be successful and they will start to repay that loan, or B, we'll write it off. But at the end of the 5-year contract with the new managers, that number will now be 0. So we're gonna get it off our books one way or the other. Either the golf course can be successful or we're going to write it off.
And Cindy, we will have more discussion on that issue with the auditors in June?
Yeah,
Okay.
June 11th.
And Jack, we've met with the auditors, myself and Mark, this guy here, and Jerry, and with Cindy and the auditors, and this was basically the recommended course of action. I wanted to pay it down faster, but I think 5 years being a good roadmap, given the fact that we have a 5-year contract. So,
Cindy, the restricted building department fees, what do you do with the fees that exceed, which that'll probably happen this year, our costs in the building department?
Right, that's why that amount is restricted. So what happens in the building department fund, as we know, we have booms and busts in development and construction and all that, and right now we're in boom times. So our revenues that are generated from the building department are exceeding our expenditures. So what we have to do then is restrict those and can't spend them on anything else, because we're in effect saving for a rainy day when the building department can't sustain itself when we're in a downturn. So that's why those funds are restricted. They can only be used for building department expenditures.
Are you allowed to borrow from them?
That I don't know.
Well, you can ask Plant Moran, please.
I will do that.
Cindy, one question I have is on the restricted Wayne County Parks money. My estimate is that number, the amount of money that is in the hands of Wayne County that is unallocated park money that we can still draw down is around $140,000. So is this, are you showing that to be like the New Year's allocation?
In 2019, the only amount we budgeted out of that potential 140,000 was 68,005.
Okay.
We put that in revenue, but we didn't match it with an expenditure. So I have it as restricted and reducing fund balance because we can't spend that on anything but a Wayne County Park project.
How much of the 4.6 million is cash?
4.6 million.
About 2.6 million.
No, 4.6, right?
Well, what about the bottom line there, 2.6?
No.
I'm just asking how much
I
is
don't,
cash?
I don't, you know what, I
Cash, but
didn't want
it's
to,
restricted.
yeah.
What?
4.6 million
Well,
is in
total,
cash.
right, but not, yeah,
Yeah, it's not spendable.
right.
Okay, so
but
the 4.6
2.6 is
million
spendable.
is all cash. All right.
Correct.
That's what I wanted to confirm.
Right, I'm sorry. The
It's
2.6
what
is.
my understanding of what fund balance is. All right.
Yeah,
It's not some depreciation in there or
no,
something
there's
like
nothing
that.
in it. That's,
All right.
right, it's supposed to be all current.
Cash in the bank.
Yeah.
All right.
Cindy, we talked earlier, but for the benefit of the rest of the board, that the PEG funds, can you explain what, so it's restricted, what are we allowed to use PEG funds for?
That's supposed to be used for public education and, like filming meetings.
Can I
Yeah,
jump in?
go ahead.
Okay. I used to negotiate cable contracts. So PEG funds are Public Education and Government. It's an acronym, so that's what it stands for. The original intent was when we had cable companies coming in, this was long before the Metro Act, the state law which effectively took it over from us and from all communities in Michigan. PEG funds are intended to be used for basically your local and in some cases school district government cable access channels. So many communities like Westland, Dearborn, Canton, they have full-blown TV studios in their city hall or township hall, and that's where that money goes, and it's used for equipment. I believe it can be used for staff. It can be used for a variety of items. All we have is Mr. Don Howard, who's behind the wall there.
Ken.
Ken Gardner. What did I call him? Don Howard?
Don Howard.
Oh, well. So I apologize to both gentlemen for that confusion. So, for example, if we wanted to revamp that studio back there, which is hardly a studio, it's a control panel, we could do that. I think a legitimate use of PEG funds could be to upgrade our sound system here. It could be used to buy a new projector. So, and because it's cable related, it's part of our local government cable outreach. I would have to review some other more recent decisions and statutes and rulings on what PEG funds can and cannot be used for. But long answer to your question, it really has to be limited to our local government cable operations, which here are very limited.
I think they can also be used to upgrade our phone system. That's worth looking at.
That would be cool.
Extremely would be, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I see Kevin. We can have that discussion offline.
I think no or yes?
Are we doing a cut over to AT&T, or does that cost us money?
That's not
Well,
costing
that
us
would,
anything.
you'd
all right.
capitalize
No,
that.
but I'm thinking in the future, our antiquated phone system, that may be a source of funds. Just for Cindy, if you don't mind, for the benefit of the board as well, there's a line item there that says committed surplus from the new millage.
Yes.
Did you recall when you all approved the OPEB funding, I put together a schedule that showed what we are going to be spending from the new 2.1 millage. And I explained to folks that in the early years, we would be running a surplus, but we would need that money to fund certain things later as OPEB costs increased and pension funds increased. That is the restriction of that. So after we spent the money on the pension and the OPEB and the new capital equipment and salary increases, there's still $129,000 left over. We're going to shove that aside and make sure that it's still there in 5 to 6 years when we need it.
Remind me how much we put in the,
The OPEB,
yeah, was it $1 million?
it was
1.2
1.2 million this year.
1.2.
And we approved 1 million for next year.
All right.
Hey, Mr. Milo back there, could you shut the door? Because I think we're going to have that HOA meeting's starting to break up. Thanks.
And just for the board to know in the future, as Mark brought up with this committed, that is a board action you're going to have to take to commit this money.
Which
to
money?
say you're the $129,224, that is the surplus from Mark's budgeted expenses, or the treasurer's budgeted expenses from the new millage. Mark had provided you all with a schedule that looked like this, columns by years. And the first 3 years, we don't need as much of that millage money as we're going to need in years 4 going forward. So that's why we need to save that money and not spend it on anything. So in order to do that, there's an action the board can take called committing fund balance. So it will be a resolution voted on, and it would take another board action to uncommit it.
When would that
So
be
it
done?
kind of saves it. We need to do it by the end of 2019.
Okay. Would that be, okay, we'll talk.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, anything else? Let's move on to the water section.
Wait a minute, I have 2 more questions. One is, do we have to have restricted any surplus from the administration fee that doesn't cover assessing and treasury? Or are we going to come out to the penny?
it's going to come out pretty close.
We're coming out pretty close to the penny. Yeah. And that's intentional, by the way.
Yeah. And then the other item is one that Cindy, you and I have been talking about. The city of Plymouth owes us about $50,000 from as long ago as 2015
Right.
for dispatch. Could you, and Kurt, I think you're having a meeting with the mayor, see if they could cut the check this month?
Well, Cindy, I think, can add to that.
They were going to cut it on June 30th, but
They said they would pay it, the balance of it by June 30th.
well, I'm saying,
They paid us $55,000 last month, and then they said they'd pay the balance by June 30th.
so you've asked them to pull it ahead and their answer was no?
I haven't met with John yet.
They're paying us.
Well, I know they're going to pay us, but
Well, they are paying us, so they've been paying us. And they're going to have it done by
yeah,
June 1st.
one of the
which is-
invoices is as old as October of 2016.
They're paying us. They'll have it, we'll have it by June. Okay, solid waste and water.
Okay, solid waste and water. Solid waste, again, the one expense item that wasn't budgeted for was the TPOA contract. And that is going to be offset by the $10,000 we talked about for the census work. Since the census work is part of the general fund, but the person doing it is in the solid waste fund, which is an enterprise fund, we have to charge her time back to the general fund, which makes that revenue to the solid waste fund, if that makes any sense.
Actually, it does.
In effect,
I'm starting to understand.
in effect, that's a almost $7,900 increase to the fund balance in the solid waste fund. The water and sewer fund, things are kind of going as budgeted. The only exceptions are the effects of the new contracts. So that's estimated at $32,800 decrease in fund balance. And it's only the end of the first quarter, so we'll have to see how that goes, but we're pretty much on budget with that fund.
And I think overall in water and sewer, we you know, because we did not fill the, I believe it was the administrative supervisor position. What was that called? We didn't fill that, and that was with wages and benefits, it was probably about a $100,000 expenditure.
Now that you mention that, how are we doing on the cross-training for water billing so we're not left hanging out if somebody gets ill or quits?
The staff continues to train each other. We've got the same crew of people now that we've had since the beginning of the year, and they've been working on that and a variety of other issues, and they work very well together, and training has been part of that process.
So we do have a backup now?
If somebody cannot come to work or is
Beautiful.
incapacitated, I mean, we have ways of
Thank
taking care of it.
Good.
Okay, Cindy, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
One more question on solid waste. Since we had 33% more people come to hazardous waste than last year, Are we going to have to make another budget amendment because we didn't budget for that expense?
You know what, I didn't even look at that. That just happened this weekend.
Right.
We would
I-
have to,
yeah,
we would have
Something
to.
that'll
might
come
have
up
to-
next, maybe.
Overtime or,
We could have gotten lucky, and
yeah, I mean, we had
it was
budgeted,
a big hit.
yeah, we had budgeted for overtime and all that, but, yeah, I understand today, Kurt updated us and said it was a very successful day on Saturday, so.
We had 1,242 cars go through, and we also, just from a budget standpoint, we have not, no one has crunched the numbers yet on what that bill is going to be that we get from the Environmental Resource Company. And then we also have overtime for the staff that participated in the event.
Good job.
Okay, any other questions or comments by the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk.
I move to approve Resolution 2019-05-14-54, authorizing the Township Clerk to make the above-mentioned amendments to the 2019 General Fund budget, the 2019 Solid Waste Fund budget, and the 2019 Water and Sewer Fund budget as shown in the attached schedules.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yes.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next is item G, Supervisor and Trustee comments. This will be our only meeting for the rest of the month of May. I know that sounds like a long time, but it's only a couple weeks. We'll meet again on June 4th for a study session. We'll have a building department update, and then we'll have a discussion with our consultants on retiree health care. On June 11th, we'll have a regular meeting. We'll be talking about the general drive hearing of necessity. We'll have that golf course loan interest rate item. Certainly, we're going to have the audit presentation. Otherwise, it's still pretty dynamic what's going to happen a month from now. But we did have, as was mentioned earlier, we did have a very successful Household Hazardous Waste Day event. We had 1,242 cars go through. We had also a really good feedback about the TDM facility on Sheldon Road. Both the staff working there and I hope the public had a positive experience with that new location. The reason for the new location is that the ice arena is undergoing maintenance on their parking lot and the bridge that services the facility, and they were unable to accommodate us for this year. I'm also really glad we didn't go there because there's a heck of a lot of work being done on Beck Road, and to add a trail of cars on a Saturday morning would have made it even worse. So we had a very good experience there, and as of now, we may go back to the TDM site for next year, and we will definitely be providing this service again. It's a quality of life issue, and it also protects our environment from many harmful materials that can find their way into our water supply. And that's all I have. Bob?
I'd like to just renew my request from several months ago to get a list of total compensation by role. We never did follow up on that.
Well, and it's a lot easier now because most of the union contracts have been settled. So we can try to work on that. Cindy and I can work on that. Anything else? Okay, Gary.
Since you got me with the marijuana thing, I'm going to get you back. Since our last meeting, I have done 4 retention visits to 4 companies in the township: Skyway Precision, Master Automatic, Diamond Tool Manufacturing, and Atra Plastics. Between those 4 companies, they have 55 job openings, and most of those job openings are computer numerical control, CNC operations people. Very, very hard to find, very, very hard to train for. Kudos to Supervisor Heisey for starting the conversation with Starkweather School and Plymouth Canton schools for how can we get our students trained in something, those that either don't want to go to college or love to work with their hands. I'm meeting next week with Schoolcraft College to do the same, to see if we can find some kind of way to feed our own companies. All of them said that is their number one concern. Everybody loves it in the township. We haven't had any issues. The Master Automatic with right next door to Wabasto, they were concerned about the 400 new jobs taking the people away from them, but they said, you guys have to convince parents that it's okay to have their kids not go to college or go to college as you work. And they said that would be awesome. So if kids are looking for a career, CNC operations, they're awesome. Those that are not, those that are engineering positions, I've got a meeting tomorrow with Seguris looking at security positions and talking about computer security. I put those openings out on my LinkedIn account, so if anybody wants to look and see what kind of openings are in the township, I publish those out there as a way of helping our companies get the word out. So that's it.
Very good. Thanks for all your work on that. That is basically volunteer work, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jerry Vorva.
Yeah, Trustee Dempsey has a birthday coming up, and seeing how he's still here, he maintains his status as the eldest of the board members.
Seeing how he's still here.
I couldn't hear you. Could you talk up?
Happy birthday.
Mark.
Just two things real quick. I sent everybody a note email earlier today. The corrective action plan that you approved back in March and we submitted to the state for the underfunded healthcare retiree cost has been officially approved by the state. So that was good news. Now we just have to execute on it, and we're taking the right steps financially to do that. My other comment is, if you blinked, you missed the auditors in our office. They were there for a grand total of 8 days on site, which is absolutely amazing, and it's a testament to Cindy and the rest of the accounting staff and everybody who's involved in preparing for that audit. I'm very confident that when you get the results of the audit, you'll hear that financially we're moving and operating much smoother than we have in the past, because we're staying on top of these issues very much so.
And I think 8 days is probably a record. Didn't want to toot our own horn, but thank you, Cindy, and also the Treasurer's Department.
I don't think they could find all the files in 8 days before.
They still can't. They're shredded. Okay. Jack Dempsey.
Two quick things. One, I looked at the Planning Commission agenda tomorrow night, and I think the DDA plan is on the agenda that's required now by state law. So will that be coming to this board at some point?
Yeah, the DDA meets on June 10th, and the state law now requires that DDAs, and we've had this discussion, the DDAs have to submit an annual master plan. And that's both long-term objectives and goals and also your financial plan as well. Our DDA is very fiscally solvent right now, and we are working on various projects. So the plan for that, Laura Haw is charged with putting that plan together. We've already had one very preliminary draft meeting with the DDA. She is now taking it to the Planning Commission. I think that's another one of the boxes that she has to check off. And then it will go back to the DDA on June 10th for their meeting. At that point, we expect them to approve it, and then it will come to this board, I believe, in July. I think we're looking at July 9th for our approval. So.
Great. So the second item, being the oldest trustee, I am forgetful more than the rest of you. So I seem to recall with Obasco that there were, or however you pronounce it, they did some kind of tree donation. Is that right? And
yes.
160 trees, I think it was.
Roughly 130 something.
Okay. So they've made that commitment, or they've paid the money, or how does that work?
Both. They've made the commitment, and they've also paid money into our tree fund. So we have put the notice out to various staff, Parks staff, Laura Haw, Dennis Cebulski on the Planning Commission. We've also reached out to the Little League teams that work at the park and other interested parties, basically looking for locations for these trees because there's a lot to deal with. And that's also in addition to some other projects that are going on in the township right now that have put money into the tree fund as well. So we are planning on a meeting, probably more of a smaller tactical meeting sometime in the next week or so to begin to delineate where some of these trees would go. The objective would be to plant them in the fall.
And do they have to be on public land as opposed to being in rights of way?
It's my understanding that they can be both on public land and in public rights of way, but then if it's in the right of way, then we have to deal with the county. So that's just another layer of government that we have to deal with.
But a key piece of this is Wabasto's going to plant the trees. So instead of...
Hillside is going to do it, not Wabasto.
Well, Wabasto is going to make sure that gets done, so they don't drop off 100 trees out in the parking lot, and we have to take care of them. So it's very important. This is something that we ask for. And they love the idea. We just tell them where they go, and they'll make sure it gets done.
And one of the locations we're looking at is the golf course because there's a lot of dead trees there that were never removed. And now that the new managers are removing those trees, they are looking to replace them and also add new trees where we've seen some losses over many years.
And an update on the one tree that is still left out there. For those of you that drive by and
You mean at Wabasto?
Yeah, there's one tree. It's got 4 baby eggs in it. It's they're hawk eggs. We're waiting for any day to have those eggs hatch, and then the tree can come down.
Well, no, they got to grow. The young need to grow. Don't.
As soon as they leave the nest, it's fair game.
Not just when they hatch.
They got to be kicked out of the nest. So. All set? Okay.
Kermit's out there with an axe.
May I be part of that committee planning of where we're going to plant or what we're doing? If you got room, I'd like to be on it.
Yeah, we'll
think about it.
We'll think about it.
All right.
So, but I mean, if you have any ideas, just
I have a lot of interest in trees and a lot of knowledge around trees,
just
so I
shoot us some
think I can add
ideas.
some value.
Okay. All right. Any questions tonight? Sir?
Yes, schedule questions. Whoever has bills for June, it'll be pretty big because we got 3 weeks, so plan
I'm not
early.
Sure whose turn is that?
I don't know. And second is,
Sucks, it must be mine.
I want to request that we don't have a work session in July and August. The first week, a study session on the first, because the first week is 4th of July week in July. Be like July 2nd would be the
No,
work
it's
session.
July 9th. Wait a minute. Let me look at my calendar. I have regular meetings scheduled for June 11th, June 25th, July 9th. Yeah, so there is no study session. There's no study session in July.
All right, so we've already, good.
And August, there would be no study session.
Good.
And and that was my plan. In fact, I mean, if we get lucky, we could even cancel some meetings in July and August.
Who's the victim for June? Oh, it's Bob Dorshevitz.
Yeah.
The
What?
bills for June.
I figured it
You have
was
a big
probably me.
stack.
What's that?
Could you get it done early?
I will promise to. I will have it done at least 4 minutes before the board meeting. Minimum.
All set? All set? Okay. All right. It is now time for public comments, limited to 3 minutes. I'm setting my timer here. Is there any comments or questions from the public? Susan Bondi.
Since you brought up Wabasto, okay, I mean, they have stripped that property, if you've driven by it. Is there a requirement, I hope, in the planning that they will plant trees around that building?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And
please.
their plan was approved unanimously by the Planning Commission a few weeks ago. Gary Heitman and I were at the meeting, and they had an outstanding presentation, and they They're very sensitive to these things.
Okay, okay.
Did they start the work yet? I mean, other than the tree cleaning? Because they're in
They're
a
at
big
work.
hurry, they hadn't signed the
Yeah,
lease.
yeah.
You know, they were all tightened up. Did they do anything?
It's strict. That building will be up by the end of this year.
I mean, it's all that prefab concrete
Yeah,
stuff.
which is a great way to build a building. It's a stronger building. I don't know, it might be lower cost.
Yeah, the tilt-ups, yeah. Popular in California.
Okay.
The ice arena is that same way.
Okay, next.
Ron Hoke, Glenview Drive.
Get closer to the mic there, or pick it up or
I'd
something.
like to make a couple of comments about the possibility of Plymouth Township Fire transporting and adding that to their responsibilities. Competition makes products and services better. It makes them better because it gives consumers a choice. In this instance, it's not pure competition, but I think the benefit of having Huron Valley as backup is it gives the citizens a choice of who they want to use. Number two, it provides redundancy. If I have a medical emergency, I like the idea of two guys racing to get to me. Redundancy is a good thing. I think the military says 1 is none, 2 is 1, 3 is 2. So the idea of having a backup in the event there is a delay from one of the two is kind of an extra layer of insurance. I recall when Fire Station 2 was being opened, a lot of the support for that was the reduction in response time. I haven't seen any numbers for the past year for the amount of reduction that represents, but it makes sense to me that if we have Huron Valley and the township, we're going to have the best of both worlds. Huron Valley does not cost us anything unless we as consumers choose to use them, so it's not a part of our tax base. So I would encourage the board to consider that strongly and vote to keep the system the way it is now. Everyone that I've spoken with is in favor of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Ron. We passed the millage for safety. Okay. I agree with Ron. We passed the millage for safety, and now we're going to eliminate HVA. We added people, now we're going to subtract people. It just doesn't make sense to me. We do mutual aid for other communities. They're out of our people are gone out of the community. Someone told me today that we're still doing all the mutual aid for the city of Plymouth, and we're not getting paid for it. So that's something to think about. But anyways, I got something. There's a lady, Karen Kaufman Rowe, supposed to be here tonight. She texted me, sent me this, and asked me to read it. Okay, this is about her husband, Pastor Greg Rowe. Just for the record, the last time I had to call an ambulance for my husband this past January, I specifically requested that HVA respond. I was told no, the township will come. I knew that HVA was an option for us, but those people wouldn't listen. When the township ambulance came, HVA had already arrived, but the township said it was their call. No, I said, I want my husband taken care of by HVA, and I want him transferred to the University of Michigan Hospital. No, said the township fire department. They told, let me look at this. They told hold a contract with St. Mary's in Livonia, and that's where we're taking him. I was furious. My husband had a dissected aorta. I didn't want him going anywhere but the University of Michigan. His doctors are there, and quite honestly, they're a better facility. Where did they take him? St. Mary's. Turns out that they were unable to treat him at St. Mary's as they lacked the physicians with the expertise required. These clowns and their contracts could have cost my husband his life, and I won't forget this anytime soon. Then she goes on and with another blog, I don't have it available right now, but they took him out. Then he was transferred out to St. Joe, and they couldn't help him. She got so angry, she loaded him in the car and took him over to the University of Michigan. Karen is also an EMT. So that's kind of disturbing to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We also saw those comments on Facebook, and we referred them to the police chief and the fire chief. I don't know if either one of you would like to comment on that?
We have no contract with St. Mary's Hospital. I believe it's illegal to do that. There's actually a specific law that doesn't allow ambulance companies or fire departments to take patients to one hospital over another. There's a name for it, but I don't remember what that specific law is called. We, as well as all private ambulance and all fire departments, are required to follow the state protocols when it comes to transporting patients to the hospital. Those are directed and determined by doctors in the emergency system that dictate which hospitals we are allowed to go to and which ones we are not allowed to go to based on the patient's condition. Most of the time, you can go to the hospital you want to go. The one notable exception is if you are unconscious, implied consent kicks in, and the ALS team would take you to the closest, most appropriate facility. And again, it does not matter what the patch on their arm says. They're dictated by medical control, not any.
I can appreciate all that, and I know there's no contracts, but apparently there was an operational issue here, because, I mean, you're not suggesting she's not telling the truth, I hope.
I never said that, and I don't know this particular, I've never heard this story before it was posted on Facebook. I don't know this patient. If I had more information, I could definitely look into it.
Well, the point is that, I mean, you need to ensure that every member of the fire department, understands that.
I already have. Every member does understand that. If HVA arrived first, like this story said, this patient would have gone in HVA's rig. That has been how we've operated for 30 years now.
So what if someone can sign off, you've told us that before, if they'll sign off, if I'm having a heart attack and I say, go for it, I'm signing off, I want to go to University of Michigan, not, do your people have that training and the piece of paper for me to sign?
Yes.
All right. So it won't be a wrestling match in the field?
Nope.
All right.
Okay. All right, anyone else?
My name is Diane Bellowis.
Oh, hold on.
Pull that down. That's good. Take it out. Hold it. Yeah.
Okay. And I live on Northwood Court, and I'm glad to hear that we don't have a contract with St. Mary's. St. Mary's is, I guess, the hospital of choice for the Township Fire Department because of the location, but they are not a trauma center. They're not equipped to handle a serious emergency, and I don't think that we need to fix a system that isn't broken. What we are doing right now is adequate, and I think we should stick with that. They're talking about bringing in revenue. It's about safety. So that little bit of money is not going to help if somebody ends up dying in the process. So, and personally, I'm a registered nurse, and I've worked at many hospitals. And if I had a true emergency, St. Mary's would not be my choice. So that's the way I feel, and I hope the board votes no on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor.
Chief, do you want to go
a
comment on that? Yes, sir.
St. Mary's is a level 2 trauma center, as is Botsford Hospital and Providence Park.
Okay.
Right. This is Susan Bondi again, and I'd like to respond to some of those comments. I'm not sure what your comments or what the comments are made regarding St. Mary's, but I have found over the years that it has been an exceptional hospital, and Botsford as well. And I did experience a case where my father had a heart attack. He wanted to go to Beaumont. He lived in Farmington Hills at the time. And again, just like Chief Phillips indicated, He ended up having a heart attack in the ambulance, and he was rushed to Botsford because it was the closest hospital at the time, and he couldn't make it to Beaumont. So they do have a policy to follow, and generally it is followed. And essentially, St. Mary's offers exceptional service. It is a trauma tube, and it is related with St. Joe's, correct? Okay. So you're getting the same. It's not the hospital it was 20, 30 years ago. Don't charge it there. I could say a whole lot more about transport. We have talked about safety. Does it bring safety? Well, is it safe to have a person on a stretcher, even though they're being, administered to by ALS certified? Is it advantageous to their health to lay there and wait for HVA to arrive? Your assumption is that these ambulance companies arrive at the same time as our paramedics, and that hasn't always, it definitely is not the rule. So, that is a safety issue to consider as well. Okay.
All right.
Evidently,
we're starting to.
Evidently, we're allowed to talk twice.
Well, now we're going to do a round robin all night.
Well,
She opened the door. Yeah.
okay. HVA tries to, this is from Karen. Pardon? Okay, this is from Karen. HVA tries to stage as close as possible to the center of the area they are covering. They also probably are the most rigorously trained practice medics in the state. How do I know? I was trained by and worked as a medic for HVA for many years. If you weren't a serious I can't say that word, student, you were weeded out. Not everyone graduated, not everyone passed the license exam. If you didn't know your material, you couldn't perform procedures correctly. With split-section decision-making, you couldn't cut it. When your physical condition had to be up tip-top, your strength was tested regularly. Couldn't perform, you're out. I made sure to live in an area covered by HBA for decades due to the quality of their training and the high standards they hold. And know this, they are truly saved my life more than once. This is a pastor's wife, by the way.
Thank you.
One quick comment.
Thank you.
I know that the fire chief has records of response time. I'm sure that Huron Valley does too. What we've heard tonight is anecdotal evidence. For example, they haven't always arrived on time. Well, has Plymouth Township always been first? I mean, I don't know, but that is something that's factually provable. So instead of dealing with anecdotes, I think because the data is available, if it's available from HVA and it's available from the township, the data should be compared rather than being subjective opinion.
Haven't you FOIA'd that information already from the township? Run data?
For 2016.
Okay, all right.
Right. I haven't seen anything about 2018 in terms of response time.
Okay.
And I haven't seen anything regarding HVA response time.
Thank you. Okay, all right. We're not. All right.
Hello, Eileen Coleman. Again, we're looking. Are we going to have more time to critique this decision? And when is this all going to be laid out? Little bits here and there aren't going to solve this issue. This is complicated. There's many things that have to be compared, contrasted, before you make such a decision. These are not simple decisions. They're not really random decisions for the public even to make. This requires people who know triage to do triage well. This requires EMS people who are experts at their fields. So you have to compare these people. Who is best prepared? I can't tell you who's best prepared. This takes study, just like anything, just like marijuana that went through without a study. The studies were there, but did the politicians look? No. Turn their eye and get money, or turn their turn their minds off and go get money from passing marijuana. This is life and death, a little different than marijuana, although there are very serious issues with marijuana. But these are serious decisions. Please weigh them carefully and let the public bring their concerns. The public I'm speaking to, they don't want to switch. So look carefully and study. Do your homework.
Well, I guarantee we're going to look at metrics, which no one's ever looked at before. And the metrics are going to be our own and HVA's or whoever we get a contract with. I mean, that's how you do it the right way. I mean, that's how you make a good decision is you look at the metrics, right? I guarantee we're going to look at metrics.
And it wasn't the politicians that legalized marijuana, it was the voters. Yeah, it was the voters. No, it was petition, it was put on the ballot by a group of pro-marijuana people. And the voters voted for it. It wasn't the politicians.
Okay. All righty, anybody else from the public who hasn't spoken yet? All right, very good. I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Heitman.
I move we adjourn at 8:40
Mr.
p.m.
Heitman motions to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.